Well, it looked like Caitlin Clark is standing up for herself and letting her presence be felt very, very strong. Caitlin Clark has declined to take part in a three-point contest. But to me, this is a strong signal to the WNBA that Caitlin Clark ain't rocking with y'all. And I don't think any Indiana Fever players.
I mean, they banned this girl's meme, banned her point, her emote. Banned it from other companies that the WNBA are partnered with. Banned it from being used, man. This is crazy work.
Caitlin Clark declined. Aaliyah Boston not invited. Perhaps the biggest miss of them all, the viral sensation, the second biggest name in the WNBA, the point princess herself, Sophie Cunningham, who's among the top 5 in three-point percentage from three-point range. Sophie Cunningham doesn't even get an invite to the three-point.
Imagine an all-star weekend where the loudest story has nothing to do with anyone actually shooting a basketball. Fans had circled the three-point contest, expecting to watch Caitlin Clark put on a show, and then word came down that she was stepping aside. Almost instantly, the question started. Was a nagging injury really the whole story, or did something shift behind closed doors once the backlash over Sophie Cunningham's missing invitation started building? And if that's the case, what exactly was the league hoping to sidestep, and where does this go from here?
We thought it was done. Just when we thought enough records were broken for the day. Not only does USA get record-breaking viewership and ratings, CBS, come on down. We're gonna break some records for you and raise your viewership ratings as well as only the GOAT, Caitlin Clark, can do. CBS receiving their highest rated WNBA game throughout the entire season at the hands of Caitlin Clark. Meanwhile, the WNBA got shoved the middle finger from Caitlin.
For the league, the calendar could not have delivered this at a worse moment. 2 full seasons had gone by with Clark pulling in the kind of crowds women's basketball had not seen in a generation, and the plan was for the three-point contest to ride that same wave and turn into appointment viewing.
I've been telling you guys for years, this dump of a league is allergic to profit. I've been telling you guys for years, the WNBA operates as a charity, not a business. You see, when you operate as a charity, your mentality is completely different. Charities are concerned about feelings. Charities are focused on emotion. Charities prioritize things like friendship, unity.
What actually happened was the opposite. The framing flipped from who's shooting to who isn't, and no league wants that particular storyline running downhill into a showcase weekend. The most recognizable name on the invitation list turned it down. The second loudest debate belonged to a player whose name never made the list at all.
Player of the Week honors. It's the second time this season, the 5th time in her career. And you heard what I just played there. Her desire is to make her team great. Her desire is always focused on winning, on her team, on the fans. She always brings the fans in there, and she gets Player of the Week honors. Now, here's the main thing.
That is where Sophie Cunningham walked into the picture. Plenty of fans could not make sense of her being left out. She has spent this season among the most accurate shooters from deep in the entire league, hovering near the top of the percentage charts, while simultaneously turning into one of the fastest rising personalities the WNBA has.
The reason I can like Caitlin Clark, or the reason I can support Caitlin Clark, is because it's not about race. Who cares that I'm black? Who cares that she is white? It is not about race. And that's why I feel like the media, the WNBA, and just people in general has just lost the plot. This is not about race for me, and it never will be. Caitlin Clark is not the face of racism. If you've been here over the past 2 weeks, you have heard me state that plenty of times. You have heard me state that plenty of times. If you are not emotionally mature enough to separate the nonsense from this woman, then it's really no conversation to have.
So the moment the field was made public and her name was absent, the obvious question wrote itself. If the point of the event is putting the league's sharpest shooters and biggest draws in one place, how does one of the most talked about figures in the sport not even make the call sheet? Then Clark passed on her own invitation and the volume doubled. In fairness, there are several legitimate explanations for why she said no. She has been managing injuries all year, and protecting her body heading into the back half of the schedule is a completely defensible call. Analysts who cover Indiana closely have pointed to workload management as the likeliest driver. None of that slowed the theories down. People online started stitching together dots that may have no connection whatsoever. They brought up Cunningham being left out. They brought up the running frustration over how Clark has been officiated. They brought up stretches of the season where they felt the league either failed to capitalize on its biggest name or failed to look after her. Whether any of those conclusions hold up is a separate argument, but the perception became part of the story regardless. And that is the bind the WNBA keeps finding itself in. Once a large share of the audience is convinced Clark has not always gotten a fair shake, every debatable decision turns into more fuel, and every snub, every whistle, every marketing choice gets read through that same filter.
2026 3-point participants: Ryan Howard, Marina Mabrey, AZ Fudd, Bridget Carlton, Natisha Heidemann, and Janelle Salute. As Casey at Behind the Line would say, who, and who? Ryan Howard, Marina Mabrey, AZ. There's like no action.
Then a second Cunningham storyline arrived. That pointing celebration of hers, the one that had already taken on a life of its own as a meme across basketball social media, reportedly caught the league's attention and ended up restricted in certain promotional contexts. However people felt about the gesture itself. Plenty read it as one more instance of the league looking uneasy the moment one of its fastest growing personalities broke through in a way nobody scripted. The irony writes itself, because the organic moments that travel across timelines for free are exactly the kind of moments leagues pour millions into trying to manufacture. That irony landed hard because modern professional sports are no longer powered by box scores, banners, and highlight packages alone. Clark belongs to that rare group of athletes whose presence alone can turn a routine matchup into a national event, and Cunningham has built her own standing by leaning into her personality and handing fans moments they actually want to talk about. Which is why so many people came away convinced the league had left a genuine promotional opportunity sitting on the table.
I'll tell you why the Indiana Fever right now is America's team. Let me count the ways. Well, Caitlin Clark, okay? Love her or not, you have to admire her. She's incredible. She just came off this record-setting weekend, back-to-back games, 45 points, 10 assists, you know, the whole thing, this number of steals, 4 steals, 2 blocks, like only 5 players, WNBA and NBA. She's the only WNBA player to do it. She continues to break.
Rather than building a night around two of its most discussed figures, the league watched the conversation drift toward who wasn't showing up and why. Fair or not, the run-up to the three-point contest ended up defined by controversy instead of anticipation, and that is almost never what any league wants heading into a marquee weekend. That is exactly why so many fans read Clark's decision as something far bigger than one athlete skipping one shooting competition. From where they sat, it was a reminder that the league's marquee names carry real leverage. Historically, most players have taken on that promotional responsibility willingly because growing the game lifts everybody involved. When the relationship feels healthy, saying yes to an appearance is barely a decision at all. When there are open questions about how a player is being treated, that same yes gets complicated in a hurry, and the audience starts hunting for deeper meaning behind every choice she makes, whether that meaning is actually there or not.
Alexa Philippou ended up dropping the news right here. So first she tweeted this: the WNBA has announced the 6 participants for Friday's three-point contest, right? And these are the names: AZ Fudd, Marina Mabrey, Ryan Howard, Natisha Heidemann, Janelle Salon, Bridget Carlton. All right, so those are the 6 shooters that are going to be in the three-point contest, and people lost their mind on it, man. They said, hold on, man, are you kidding me? Did y'all forget Caitlin Clark is in this league? Like, what's going on?
Obviously, Clark is the only person who knows every input that went into her decision, and pretending otherwise would not be fair to her. Her health, her workload, her own priorities for the season, any of those could have carried the day, and all of them are entirely reasonable. Still, whatever the reasoning, the result was impossible to miss. The single biggest draw the league has was no longer part of one of the signature events of All-Star Weekend, and a lot of fans were left disappointed that they would not get to watch one of the best long-range shooters the sport has produced go to work on one of its brightest stages. The immediate effect was that attention slid away from the players who did say yes and settled squarely on the ones who weren't there. Instead of arguing about who was going to win the thing, much of the basketball world spent the week talking about Clark, Cunningham, and the questions hanging over how the field got picked in the first place. That might end up being the lasting takeaway here, because in the current sports landscape, the biggest story is not always authored by the people who actually take the floor. Does the relationship between the league and its most visible faces come out of this stronger, or is this just the newest entry in an argument that refuses to go away?
CBS Sports PR and WNBA Communications. Here it says the July 18th New York Liberty versus Indiana Fever game on CBS is now the second most watched WNBA game since 2000. Since 2000, averaging 2.579 million viewers, peaking at 3 million viewers. 3 million viewers for Caitlin Clark. Who else in this league getting 3 million viewers? Is it Asia Wilson?
Pull the camera back from this one weekend and the whole thing gets even more interesting. The WNBA has never commanded attention like it does right now, and an enormous share of that has traveled with Clark from city to city. Fever Road games have turned into events, buildings sell out, resale prices climb, broadcast numbers have blown past what anyone projected, opposing franchises have said out loud what hosting Indiana does for their bottom line. None of that is a knock on the talent stacked across the rest of the league, but it does underline a simple reality, which is that one player has massively widened the audience, and the irony there is almost too neat. The league spent years making the case that women's basketball deserved a bigger seat at the mainstream table, and that argument has been won on a scale few expected. Then the player pulling the largest television audience opts out of one of its biggest showcases, and the spotlight swings off the event and onto the reason she isn't in it. If health was the driving factor, that is completely defensible. Athletes are allowed to prioritize the games that actually move the standings over exhibitions, and superstars across every major sport have sat out all-star competitions for exactly that reason.
Charities aren't worried about taking advantage of opportunities to make money. They're focused on helping people, or in the case of the WNBA, making people hate this dump of a league. In business, it is extremely rare for you to be lucky enough to stumble upon a once-in-a-generation opportunity to elevate your company. 30 years ago, the WWF was blessed with an opportunity that literally came out.
But fans who have tracked this season closely suspect there is another layer underneath. All year long, the arguments over how Clark gets officiated have flared up again and again. Hard fouls get frame-by-frame treatment. Missed whistles trend. Every physical exchange sets off another round online. Agree with the complaints or not, the perception is undeniably out there. And again, nobody outside her circle actually knows her reasoning. But the fact that this is the conversation at all says something about how much trust has drained away between a chunk of the fan base and the league office. Some took the restrictions around Cunningham's celebration as the league trying to tamp down something that had gotten wildly popular on its own. Others countered that leagues police celebrations and branding all the time, and that this was far more routine than the critics made it sound. Whichever side you land on, it stacked one more complication onto an already messy week. That is a difficult hole to climb out of. Picture rolling out a blockbuster and having two of the headliners skip the premiere. The movie might still be great, but the week belongs to the empty seats on the carpet. That is more or less what unfolded here.
Has led up to this. Indiana Fever players have not been getting the right calls. Players have been getting, might as well say, assaulted on the basketball court, and different various things has been happening. So if you guys have not heard the news, the WNBA made an announcement that the three-point contest, and they listed several people that will be taking part in the three-point contest. And with that being said, Caitlin Clark has declined to take part in it. Now, some people mad, some people ain't.
The shooters who did accept their invitations deserved far better than becoming an afterthought. They earned those spots with the way they have played all season, and they were always going to put on a legitimately entertaining competition. The unfortunate part for them is that the buildup belonged to the absences rather than the field. Every one of them had earned the right to perform on one of the league's largest stages, and yet the public conversation kept sliding off their names and onto the ones that weren't there. In place of genuine excitement about the contest, social feeds filled up with what-ifs, with fans sketching out the version of the night that never happened. How big would the television number have been if two of the sport's most recognizable personalities had shot their way into a final round against each other? Those imagined scenarios ended up nearly as compelling as the real event, because the audience naturally gravitates toward the version they believe would have been must-see.
But to do it in the way that Caitlyn did it is really amazing. Amazing. Why amazing? Because she's been on restricted minutes. She's on limited minutes, and she still gets such an...
One thing, though, seems beyond argument. When Caitlin Clark makes a decision, the basketball world stops and takes note, because her influence reaches well past the final score of whatever game is being played. In the same way, when Sophie Cunningham lands at the center of an online cycle, the sport notices immediately, because she has built herself into one of the most recognizable personalities the league has. The fact that both of them managed to own the headlines of All-Star Weekend without ever stepping onto the floor is a loud statement about how influence works in sports, now measured not only in points, assists, and championships, but in the ability to steer the conversation long before tip-off and long after the final buzzer. Sometimes the biggest win is controlling the story without saying a single word. And if the league doesn't get its arms around this, every comparable decision from here will be dissected, compared, and relitigated long after the last shot of this contest falls. That is the challenge sitting in front of the WNBA, because in the social media era, every decision outlives the event that produced it, and fans very rarely forget the nights they felt should have been something much bigger.